Is it worth the risk going for the most affordable CFExpress card? Today we are looking at the Pergear CFExpress Type A card, which they have sent to me. However, they have no say in this review whatsoever. Now, actually, before we get into this, I was actually looking at picking one of these up anyway, so it was kind of lucky that Pergear got in touch and asked me to review the product. It is something I've been looking for because I thought, well, it'd be nice to have a bit more storage space than the current 128GB SD cards that I've been using from Angelbird. And when you start looking at other options, when you look at higher storage in V90 SD cards, they get very, very expensive, to the point where you have to start thinking that perhaps maybe it's better to go for one of these instead. Now, to be honest, to actually test out a card long term, the only way you can really do that is to keep using it time and time again to find out if it really is going to be truly reliable. So right now I'm going to commit to an update video in 1 year's time. So the end of 2024, I'll do an update on whether this card is running just as well as it has been for the last couple of months. Speaking of those last couple of months, I have been using this card very heavily indeed. I've been pretty much shooting every day since October, all the way up to Christmas, and nearly every day I was using this memory card in the camera. And it has worked flawlessly. I've had no issues whatsoever. I've been using this along with our Angelbird SD cards, and I've seen no issues at all in that entire time. In fact, I've loved the speed of the copying of this. It's much faster to transfer off the camera, and of course it does give you access to those higher bit rates as well if you want to shoot S&Q at 120 frames in All-I. Now, I haven't done that. I generally don't bother with All-I, although that is completely possible with these cards. I just generally stick to XAVC-L just because I find it is more than good enough. In fact, I've done a whole video about which codecs I've used. Now, just because these cards are very affordable doesn't mean they're going to be bad or unreliable. As I said, so far I've had no issues with the card at all. I can see the concerns people have with an unknown company like Pergear and whether you can really trust your footage on one of these cards. Well, I don't think necessarily a long-term manufacturer is a guarantee for high quality memory. We've seen that with SanDisk and their whole issues with their SSDs suddenly just wiping people's data, and that's been a big problem. That's a well-established company. So I think even if you're going for more established brands, the risks are still there. As I mentioned, the write speeds of these cards are fast enough to be able to do all of the codecs in the Sony FX3, the A7S IV, whichever camera you are using with CFExpress Type A cards. Where I think really the big advantage of going for one of these cards over a V90 SD card though comes in is really in those transfer speeds. That's where you really do save some time. The card claims it can do around 880 megabytes per second for transferring, but in reality it's more around 500 onto a T7 drive, which is still very impressive and more than fast enough. I have noticed if you leave the card and the card reader plugged into the computer for a long period of time, it does get very hot. Even if you're not doing any transferring or even if it's just plugged in on its own, it will get really hot. So if you start trying to transfer when it's hot, it will slow down and you're not going to get anywhere near the speeds it's capable of doing. Speaking of the card reader, Pergear also sent me the CFExpress Type A card reader that they've got, which is also a nice, well-made piece of equipment. It's also got an SD card slot on the bottom, so that's really handy if you've got an older MacBook Pro that doesn't have an SD card reader built into it. The cable is actually removable, which is nice to see, and it locks in place, so it feels secure when it's actually using it. The only thing I don't really like about this cable setup is the fact that they've attached the USB Type A to the side of the USB-C. I guess it's nice not to have two cables to do the same job, but it is annoying because this really does get in the way if you're plugging in two USB-C cables next to each other on the MacBook Pro. The other issue I could see with this, because of the way it locks and slots into the card reader, it may be that if you ever break this cable, it'll be hard to find something else that actually fits in here. So that could be a bit of a negative, and probably a standard connector, even if it wasn't as secure, would have been a better option on the reader. So there you go, that is the Pergear CFExpress Type A card, a very impressive card that I have had no issues with so far. As I said, I will be doing an update review in a year's time to let you know if it is still being just as reliable as it has been over the last couple of months. maybe it is too much of a risk for yourself and you don't really want to go for one of these cards, but I think it's worth checking out, and I think even if you're just using it as a backup, it's certainly a good option to go for if you're looking for a bit more storage or a bit more speed with your transfers. If you like the sound of this card, then make sure you click on the affiliate link down below, which helps out the channel, and please like and subscribe as always, as that also massively helps me out. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.